Hello wonderful humans and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's video I'm going to be discussing or sort of sharing my experiences of travelling with social anxiety and depression. More on the social anxiety than the depression, and it's kind of things I've learned along the way to manage dealing with mental health issues when they crop up when you're travelling. This is just what I do and what works for me, and I thought it could help other people out there. Travel can be amazing, and there are instances where travel has helped my mental health, but there are also instances when I've been travelling and it's not that it's necessarily directly hindered my mental health, but because you're in a situation where you can't do your normal routines or you can't have the people around you, particularly if you're solo travelling, you won't necessarily have your support network around you. You won't necessarily have kind of the safe spaces you can go to and the things you can do to help your mental health. So it's kind of working out how to manage them and deal with them when they crop up, and also pre-plan so hopefully your mental health doesn't worsen when you're travelling, because travelling should be this wonderful experience, and I think it can be, even if you have mental health issues. It definitely can be, but maybe just a little more prep is required. That brings me quite nicely to my first topic, which is plan. You don't want to over plan, because part of travel, particularly if you're doing long-term travel, if you're doing solo travel, if you're doing backpacking style of travel, which is the majority of travel I've done, part of the joy and adventure is in the spontaneity. It's in the, meeting up with a group of people and then suddenly being like, oh, you know what, I'm going to go to that waterfall with you, or I'm going to do that little 2-day excursion that I wasn't originally planning, but you've all said this town is amazing and I should go there and I'm going to go there and blah, blah, blah. And that is part of the joy of it. And I don't want to take that joy away, but drawing on my own experiences, I also know that there have been instances where I haven't done enough planning and it's landed me in situations where then particularly my social anxiety can get a lot worse. So when I was 21, I went on my first big backpacking experience around Canada, and I booked the flights on a whim because I'd just finished university and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was working at Boots, which is a shop in the UK, to get some money, and I was basically bored and I knew I'd always wanted to travel. So one day, I distinctly remember it was like around Christmas time, I just booked a flight to Toronto, a one-way flight, cost £250. I booked it to Toronto for 2nd, 3rd of January, really like first week of January, and I hadn't planned, didn't have a clue what I was going to do in Toronto, didn't have anything figured out, and then I sort of figured it out from that initial, I've booked a ticket, let's go. And for the first few weeks I was there, it was amazing. And then I quickly learned not a lot of people travel around Canada in the winter because it's bloody cold. It is freezing, and I'm talking when I got to Quebec City, it was like minus 20 degrees, horrible. The wind chill was awful, like you didn't want to go outside. You couldn't spend that long outside and do things you wanted to do. You were constantly ducking into places. And because of this, not a lot of people were travelling or backpacking, and they weren't in the hostels. So I ended up in a situation where I was sharing a room with a lovely French girl who didn't speak much English. My French is very limited. I have some, I did learn at school, but it's very limited. So I couldn't really bond with her in the way I would if it was someone I shared a language with, which is no fault on her part, no fault on my part, it was just the situation. We did hang out together, and I hung out with her and this other French guy, and they were very nice and they always included me, but I was spending days and days at a time hanging out with people who I didn't know the language in a city that was freezing. I didn't feel I could just go and escape to nature, and at this time I didn't know I had social anxiety and depression. It was undiagnosed. Looking back on it, I'm like, that's definitely what was happening. I was going into a spiral of depression because my social anxiety was going through the roof. And then, to top it all off, the hostel was like, you can only stay for 2 days, 3 days, then we'll fill up, so you'll have to find somewhere else. And in my naivety, I was like, oh, that's fine, I'll just go stay in a hotel for a few days because I'll still want to explore Quebec City. Like, I don't want to move too fast. If I didn't want to leave after 3 days, this was before I got there. And then when I got there, I was like, actually 3 days probably would have been enough because I'm not really enjoying this city. Again, Quebec City is probably a lovely city, but it wasn't what I needed at that time. Ended up going into this hotel, and I kid you not, I didn't leave this hotel apart from to go to the local Subway for cookies, not even the sandwiches, the cookies, to feed myself once a day. I was in this new city, this new continent, meant to be living my dream, and I was spending a fortune on a hotel just to stay in a hotel room all day. And I think I binge watched like a TV series on Netflix because I had an iPad. This is not the things travel dreams are made of, and this is where planning comes in handy. Because now, when I look to book somewhere to stay, I know I need a hostel that, I want to go when the hostel's going to be fairly busy. I don't want it to be heaving, I don't want it to be packed, but I kind of want to go at a time when I know there's going to be other people there that I can talk to and make friends with, because that's a big part of travelling, especially if you're solo travelling. But even when I travel with friends, we have deliberately chosen hostels that will have a social vibe, will have places and things for us to do. We might be able to meet people, they might give us advice on places to go in the evenings, but they're not party hostels. It's not going to be, you know, drunk people coming in and out of the door at 3 a.m. every night, people hooking up. That does happen. There are hostels like that. No judgment, but that's not the experience I want. That's not the experience my social anxiety can handle. Why would I put myself in a situation where I know it's potentially going to trigger my social anxiety if I can avoid it? I can still go to hostels, I can still have a good time, I can still go out if I want to go out in the evening, especially in places like Budapest, which is one of the places I'm going. But it's not all that hostel is geared up to. It's not going to be the focus of that hostel, because I know for me, I need one that has enough people where I want to do things and meet people and feel part of a community, particularly when I'm solo travelling. But it isn't that pressure to constantly be going out, constantly be drinking, constantly be spending money. Sometimes when I'm solo travelling, I will book an Airbnb because I'll be like, you know what, I'm going for 2 days. I've got all these things I want to do. At the moment, I'm not really feeling up to meeting new people. My social anxiety is not in a place where I want to deal with other people in my space, so I'll book an Airbnb. But then I'll make sure I'm doing social things. So maybe I'll sign up for, you know, a group free walking tour, and you can meet people that way. Other times, I've said, I'll go to a hostel, and then I know I'm more likely to meet people, but then I have to be ready to be more social sort of up front, because I've had experiences where I've gone to a hostel expecting to be really social, and I've got there and I just haven't wanted to speak to anybody. My social anxiety has not been in a place where I feel comfortable meeting new people. I don't want to put myself out there, which is something you're constantly doing when you're travelling, particularly solo travelling. And then it's kind of ruined my experience, because I've been staying in this place where everyone else seems to be having this amazing time and meeting everybody, and then I'm there like, oh my god, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I just, you know, include myself? And that's not the experience I wanted. So in then retrospect, I should have maybe gone the Airbnb route. So that's what I mean. Like, obviously you won't always know how you feel the day you turn up, because it can be changeable, but just plan as much as you can. Are you going to feel comfortable staying by yourself but then doing maybe more group activities like tours? Or would you rather stay in a hostel but then explore by yourself in the day? This is things you need to think about, I think, a little bit more when you're travelling with a mental health issue. I would say the most important thing to plan is plan where you're going to stay, because that can really change the dynamic of a holiday. And depending on your mental health, whether you're travelling with friends, travelling with family, whether you're travelling with friends, travelling with family, travelling by yourself, or travelling in like an organised group, which, okay, an organised group you don't pick where you're staying, but you can read up on it. They always have so much information, so you know in advance what the situations are going to be. There's probably the option, if you want to spend a bit more and get a bed by yourself, if you know that you don't want to share a room with someone. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what is best for you, because you know that way better than I could. But I know for me, I sometimes need to be able to go back somewhere and not have to deal with people. Sometimes I want to be in a situation where I'm going to meet people, because I know I'm probably going to spend the days, you know, exploring by myself. And that's something you have to figure out, and what your limits of your social anxiety or your depression or whatever your mental health issue are. I feel like plan was very rambly, so I'm hoping know yourself is going to be a bit more concise. What I mean by know yourself kind of links to what I was just talking about knowing when you are getting yourself into a situation that could trigger your mental health issues or could lead you into a position you don't want to be in. So you can kind of take this not just with mental health, but if you are traveling, let's say with friends, and they all want to go out in an evening, they want to go clubbing, they want to dress up, they want to get drunk, completely fair, they want to enjoy the nightlife or wherever they're staying. Some places you go, that's a big part of the travel experience. But if you don't want to do that, and if you know that's not going to make you happy, and if you're not going to feel comfortable doing that, and if you don't want to get drunk in a foreign country, or if you don't want to go out late at night, you don't have to do that. You are allowed to say, go have an amazing time, I'm not going to come, I'm going to stay at the accommodation. Or even, you know, let's say you're in a hostel and you've been talking to this other group and they're going to go for a late night showing of something at a cinema, and there is no harm in saying to your friends, I'm going to go do that, you have an amazing time, can't wait to hear all about it tomorrow. You don't have to stay with your friends 24/7 when you're travelling in a group. The same with family. And I think this is something that took me a while to learn, but it's something I do now quite often. The only time I don't really do it is if I'm only travelling with one other person, and I think that's because it's not always fair to say to that other person, I'm going to disappear now and be by myself, even if you don't want to be by yourself, that's the situation I'm forcing you into. But certainly when I travel in groups of basically 2 or like 3 or more, I will quite often be like, okay guys, you want to go to the beach. I'm not a beach person. I have sensitive skin, so the sea doesn't agree with me, sand doesn't agree with me, and I burn very easily. So there's not a lot for me at a normal beach. Some beaches are amazing, but most of the time I can skip a beach. What I will often say to them is, you go have an amazing time at the beach. I will go find a park. I will go do this. I'll go read in a cafe. I will go explore this museum that no one else is interested in. And I'll meet you at this time, at this place. Know yourself well enough on the trip to know when you need to take a step back, when you maybe mentally health-wise aren't feeling up to exploring all day. It's perfectly fine when you're traveling to say, I'm gonna have a me day and I'm gonna spend time at the hotel, or I'm gonna go to this park, or I'm gonna go to this place I feel safe and do the kind of things I would do at home, because right now I need that routine, I need that comfort, and I need that kind of stability that maybe I'm not getting from traveling and exploring. And that's okay. Even if that means, let's say you're on a group tour, speaking up and saying to the tour leader, I'm not going to do this activity. I'm very happy for the group to go and do this activity, but just to let you know, I don't want to do it. You don't have to tell them. You don't have to justify yourself. You just maybe need to say, this doesn't feel like the right activity for me. I'm going to go do this. When should I meet you? How can we make this work? Because at the end of the day, especially on a group trip, you've paid for it. You've spent that money. You should be allowed to have the trip you want. The third tip, and probably the one that I think people find the hardest to admit sometimes, is it's okay to stop traveling, and it's okay to say, I don't want to be here anymore. And this mainly applies to people who are doing long-term travel. It's okay to come home, or to stop, or to say, okay, right now, I don't want to keep doing all the stuff we've got planned. I just need a week in this location, kind of detoxing or treating it like a house, or whatever you need to do. You know, for me, I like creature comfort. So if I'm long-term traveling and I get into a situation where I'm not enjoying it anymore, what is the point of continuing? Traveling is meant to be fun. It's meant to open you up to new experiences. And yeah, it's not going to be fun all the time. It's not going to be every second, oh my god, this is amazing. You will run into problems and hardships. But if you are completely miserable and depressed and crying all the time and lonely, or all these kind of, you know, if your mental health is going down the toilet, you don't have to stay there. Why would you force yourself to stay in a situation you are not happy with? You don't have to do it. No one is forcing you to. It is your life. You are allowed to say, you know what, I gave it a go, but right now, in this time, in this moment, this is not the right time for me to travel. I'm going to go home. You do that. Because at the end of the day, your mental health is more important than the next 3 months you have planned, because you can always come back and do it again when your mental health is better. Just as an FYI to that, I have done that. When I was travelling around Canada, my mental health got so bad in Quebec City, I came home. I didn't go on to all the other places I had planned. I had a whole another 5 months planned. I only was out there for a month. It is perfectly okay to come home early, or to stop, or to change your plans. That's another important thing. It's not just about stopping, but it's about, maybe you've got a very active holiday planned where you're doing a lot of skydiving or a lot of hiking or anything like that, and you suddenly are like, oh, you know what, that's not where my headspace is right now. It's okay to then be like, I'm gonna go do city breaks, or vice versa. If you've got lots of city break stuff planned, or a lot of kind of like, you know, museum touring or whatever it is, it's okay to say, you know what, that's not gonna work for me anymore. I need to change and get back to nature. Whatever it is you need to do to feel more comfortable for your mental health, that's what you should do, because at the end of the day, it is your life, it is your trip. You are allowed to do whatever you want on it. I feel like it was very rambly and very ranty, but those are my 3 sort of tips. I don't think they're tips as such, they're just things to consider if you're travelling with mental health. I think travelling with mental health is very much like living with mental health. You don't know what's going to happen, you can't predict it, you don't necessarily know what's going to set you off. Most of the time what you've got to do is you've got to manage it, and you've got to be kind to yourself. That's the most important thing. Never ever let anyone pressure you when you're travelling into doing something that you know is not right for your mental health. So yeah, my tips on travelling with social anxiety, depression, mental health, from someone who has done it and who's had those experiences. See you next time.